Now, Simon Wall, when did you come to Westport?
I came to Westport, I came to Mayo, which was Westport actually, where I first settled, in May 1996, and I secured myself a one-bedroom, two-storey house in a place called Carrabeck Upper, commonly known as Pale Hill. And I lived there alone for about a year until I brought my new bride home, and I carried it across the UPVC threshold of 21 Carrabeck Upper.
Good. And where did you come from?
I came from Rathfarnham in Dublin. I'd been studying in the UK. I came home. I was working there for 2 years, and I got a job. I got a job offer. Well, an interview came up for Mayo County Council. I came down, did the interview. They asked me to do a medical afterwards, which is always a good sign. And I came down on a 6-month contract, and I never went home.
And what profession did you pick?
I picked architecture.
Architecture. And where did you do the architecture?
I studied architecture in Hull, in the north of England, in the county or the Shire of Yorkshire, on the east coast.
And did you come straight from that to Westport?
No, I
or
worked
to Mayo?
in Sandymount when I came home for 2 years for John O'Neill and Associates, just off Sandymount Green, where I was working mainly on apartment buildings, and pubs as well, pubs and apartments.
And did you do a general architecture degree, or any are there specialities in architecture?
I did a number of electives on town planning. Actually, was a speciality I did within architecture. I didn't study a specialist town planning degree, but I did electives within my course. But the college I went to was very much a community architecture-based college. It had a left-wing political bent on it, and it was very much the architect could empower communities to enrich their urban environment. So coming to a local authority was a very good fit for me. And I came down and I started working in Orris and Cunday in Castlebar in the architects department, where I started off with town improvements.
And how long were you in Castlebar for?
I was in Castlebar for about 2 years.
2 years.
And then Pádraig Hughes, the then town manager, along with Peter Hines, felt I should come over and start assessing planning applications for their architectural merit. And I was doing it a day a week, and I got on very well with Pádraig Hughes, and I went 2 days a week and then 3 days, and then it became a full-time job. And we pioneered really the template of the community architect, or the town architect as it was called. And we started getting involved in a lot of community projects and new buildings and public realm spaces. So the architect was planted in the town councils, and that template was copied then in Castlebar and Ballina shortly afterwards.
Did Pádraig Hughes have an interest before you arrived? I think he did get rid of signage, or were you there when the signage...
He was here when I arrived, but we were comrades in arms, and I'm only aware of what happened after I arrived, but we removed a lot of signage, that's for sure.
I heard you moved a couple of acres of them, did you? Or?
Well, if you put it all flat on the ground, it was over an acre all right.
An acre, so I heard
that.
Yeah.
A lot. It took a year or two, but you know, signage was like an invasive species of plant growing out of the hedgerow at every junction coming into Westport because the tourism industry. So we tidied a lot of that up and licensed fingerpost signs, but it was to the betterment of the town. And after a while, the townspeople embraced that very much.
And had you been to Westport before that?
I had been to Westport as a child once or twice. I was very young. I remember visiting Westport House for a day. We used to go to Connemara on our holidays, and sometimes we'd come up on a day trip. And I remember rowing the boat at Westport House on the lake. And I also, funnily enough, remember buying sweets as a child in Don McGreevy's. Now, I didn't know Don at the time, but I was also very impressed. And I was only here maybe 2 days ever in my childhood. I remember Cool Millions and the array of sweets, and it left a lasting
big lollipops
on my mind. It's a fond memory in my mind from my youth.
And what was your impression of Westport when you arrived here first?
I loved it instantaneously. I loved the fact it was a planned town. I love the fact the Mall was canalised into a river, making that civic gesture to what was the front gate lodge and the entrance to Westport House. I love the house itself, the formality of the streets, the uniformity of all the buildings that contribute to a collective civic statement, and being nestled in the parkland at the base of the great pyramidal Croagh Patrick in the distance, and Clew Bay. It was idyllic. It's very much an architect's paradise and habitat.
So you wallowed in that for a while anyway. And what were the major changes you made? You made a lot of changes in the town, didn't you?
Well, I tell you, my time here in the town coincided with when I arrived. They were already preparing a town design statement, which was Westport 2000, which was essentially an intellectual gift to the town to celebrate the millennium.
And who drafted that?
It was drafted by a series of private consultants. There was Jerry Mitchell and Associates. There was Cody's, I think, and Brian Meehan. There was a few external bodies that prepared the plan. Today we could probably do it in-house. But essentially it gave us a roadmap of what should happen to Westport in the future, from the very smallest thing like street furniture right up to where new streets and backlands and civic buildings should be. And that was really the harness. And very luckily at that time we had Section 23 tax designation, tax breaks for holiday development.
In the Kenny.
And we... Perhaps I was there when I arrived.
Yeah.
And also you had the Celtic Tiger, and they're two very potent engines. And so we used Westport 2000 to harness that. And the good people of Westport, who are very businesslike, saw the opportunity in Section 23 tax designation and the Celtic Tiger. And it was a great time. I suppose it was the biggest building boom in Westport since it was built initially in Georgian times, and that really goes right across the nation for the Celtic Tiger. And we were very lucky that Westport 2000 structured all of that development. So it didn't happen in a haphazard manner. It was very focused and structured, and it rejuvenated a lot of the town centre. At the same time, we bought a lot of backlands with Porrick Hughes driving it, industrial buildings like Friel's and the old cinema. And I think there was a dairy where the Mill Street was before I arrived as well. So all of those backlands became car parking to allow us to take pressure off the historic streetscapes and do a little bit more public round space, like the new trees, the greenery around the octagon, give a little more kind of precedent back to pedestrians and discriminate against the car a little. Now the car's your friends, we got the car on the backlands, but allowed us to free up the streetscape and make it a much more pleasant space to live.
Absolutely, yeah. And what are the main features of the town? What are the big features? I suppose Westport House.
Yeah, I suppose all of the civic statements that interconnect, that bring you on a journey through the town right up to the house. So I suppose you start with the view from Knockgranny coming down, and you see the town nestled with Croagh Patrick in the background and the house in the distance. So it's a very potent view coming into the town, and Croagh Patrick leads you on. As you come down, you have, I suppose, the main civic space, which is the canalised Carabeg River, which has been straightened. Historically, that river is much smaller than it is in reality today, the way we perceive it. But they made two canals out of it and interlinked them and put the tree-lined avenue down each side with the merchant princes' houses. So that set you up on the visual axis to the gate lodge on the front of Westport House. And then you travel before the crescent was built across the landscaped lawn, and I hear Richard in the background doing Joseph Mary Plunkett. I see his blood upon the rose, which is wonderful. I'm getting slightly distracted.
Hang on a sec. We're going again. No.
Richard is wonderful. If he was a building, he should be listed.
Richard White.
Richard White.
We have him on record.
I see his blood upon the rose by Joseph Mary Plunkett is his masterpiece.
He's very good at it.
He's
very
exceptional,
good.
and he's a joy to listen to.
Absolutely.
So we're on the Mall. So the Mall was designed as a big civic gesture to lead you in the visual access to the gate lodge of Westport House. You carried across the lawn, and through the, I suppose, copses of mature deciduous trees, you could see the steps of Westport House. So it was a dramatic series of civic spaces that bring you up to Westport House through the parkland, and that sequence ensures that you know you're arriving at the house of someone very important, who invested so much in design, and they're proud of their town that they delivered over that period.
Another historic building, the courthouse.
The courthouse. I don't really have the big back history on the courthouse.
Which is closed now. And
it's closed, yes. It is closed recently. And I think the OPW have given it over for a civic purpose. So it could have a good future. But
it would make a great museum, would it?
It could, for the key. I know the museum down at the harbour needs relocation because of flooding. But it potentially could be a good new home. All right.
And the up in the Octagon is a feature, isn't it?
The Octagon itself is a wonderful feature, and The column in the middle came much later to commemorate Glendinning, but everyone perceives it as part of the original design, and I think it's made of Portland stone. And of course you had Glendinning, who was Lord Altman's tax collector, was on the top, but he was removed by target practice for the IRA in the 1920s, who were shooting from the balcony in the front of the town hall. But Westport, never missing an opportunity, I think around 30 years ago now, replaced, I suppose, what was left of Glendinning's boots with St. Patrick on the summit, on the tip of it. But I believe he was very controversial. It was before my time when he was erected on top of the monument, because he wasn't the traditional St. Patrick with the beard and the mitre and the hat, that he looked like a 25-year-old Roman legionnaire. But I think people have got used to him on the top, and they embrace him and like him very much. And I think panels around the edge were replaced at that stage as well. I suppose it's the advent of a new country and a new nation. Instead of taking the monument away, they recycled it. So very contemporary thinking, and put a new philosophy on top.
We lost a few things. The workhouse.
The workhouse, I've seen one photograph of it.
Yeah, well, there's one up there. There's one up there. Yeah.
Structure, but the only remnants I know of the workhouse, I was doing an extension on one of the cottages, and there was a return that we had to demolish. This was for a social house, about 20 years ago now. And when we demolished the return, I was surprised at the thickness of the wall. Yeah. But there were big blocks of cut stone coming out, and of course they were from the original workhouse that were recycled again. And so the cottages were built on the site of the workhouse, and I believe in 2 phases as well. And the first phase has Welsh blue large slate on it, and the second phase has very small slate that has come from Louisburg, because the transition between the 2 phases was the economic war with Britain and De Valera. So they were using their own local produce, which probably wasn't as good a quality as the Welsh slate, but that delineates the 2 phases, I'm told.
And we lost the military barracks, which is on John's Row.
Before my time as
Before
well.
your time.
The elms were there when I arrived, but I have seen photographs of it. And of course the right-hand side of the quadrant is still there as you look at the elms, which is Prospect Avenue, which was part of that quadrangle.
The hospital is still in the back. Gill's old house was the hospital.
That's what was the infirmary.
Infirmary,
I
that's right.
There mustn't be too many people sick. It's quite a small house.
It was kind of a pity to lose all these things, wasn't it? The workhouse.
Well, I suppose back in those days, people weren't as conscious of the
absolutely,
value of
I agree.
and it was a broadness within society, and I think people are changing now, and they're getting more conscious of the environment, their historic environment, which is a wonderful thing.
And we had distilleries around the town.
Yes, and it's wonderful to have a brewery back in town, Meskin Brewery.
That's right, in Patrick, yeah.
Westport's Blonde Beer and Westporter Stout. And so it's obviously the Livingston's philosophy coming back and being reinvented within Westport.
So you moved to Castlebar then? Promotion?
I started in Castlebar. I started Castlebar to Westport. I was here for almost 25 years. And then I moved. I got a promotion, and the Gita Keena, the senior architect, retired, and her position came up, and I applied for it, and they gave me the position. So I had to move from Westport over to Castlebar. My role is very different now. It's very much, I suppose, the thing at the moment is social housing, and we're pumping out social housing at the moment. There's no end of money coming from central government, which is wonderful with the housing crisis. Yeah. And we have about 30 sites all over Mayo at various stages. And how many houses would you have in total, do you think? Oh, there's so many, I don't know. I'd have to add them all up. But the most recent ones we've delivered are just before Christmas. We finished 50 houses on the Golf Course Road. That's right. And they're lovely houses, yeah? We're very pleased with the scheme. And there's a lot of positivity in town with so many houses coming in one tranche. And I believe there's great demand for them. And we've, at the same time, just before Christmas, we finished 16 in Mulranny, because there's a huge demand in Mulranny, because a lot of the houses in Mulranny have gone to holiday homes. So it's very hard for young people to get houses. So this plugs that gap to a certain extent. But 16, and we worked very closely with the Jerry up there, Jerry Coley, and the village, and they were really super pleased when the application went in that they were getting houses for local people. So it's a real privilege to be involved in that type of delivery. It's a wonderful thing. And you have schemes all over the county, yeah? We have schemes in Ballina, Carnacon, Cong, Ballycastle, Castlebar, Ballavari, everywhere. I have this chart on my wall. There's so many symbols on it. There's so many.
Isn't that fantastic?
It's fantastic.
That's fantastic,
In fact,
yeah.
we're producing so many houses at the moment that we don't have enough architects. So what we do is we split the office in two, and that we deliver a lot of our own stuff in-house with our own project architects, which is wonderful for local authority to have that. And the other half of the houses we tender out to external architects to deliver as well. So it means we can double our production and roughly have the same crew. But it's very different from town planning and working with Westport, but it's also a tremendous privilege to be able to afford people through the government, of course, who are very generous in giving that funding and housing, and it changes people's lives. It's a tremendous, powerful thing in someone's life to have their own house.
So do you miss Christie's Harvest?
I still go there.
You still go
not
there?
as much
Not
as
as
I
much,
used to.
yeah.
It was a much more regular halt for me. Christy has moved on, and Hugh, his relation, runs it, and Hugh is good chat and he's great company. And I miss having a coffee with you, Ollie, and Tony McCabe there.
Well, we'll have to have one soon.
We definitely will.
Thank you very much.